Awami Davies, the student nurse who went missing in Croydon a month ago, could still be in the local area and in need of help, officers have revealed. Simon Harris is at New Scotland Yard for us now. Simon, what are the police saying?
Awami Davies was reported missing 5 weeks ago, and although there hasn't been any significant development yet in the police attempt to find out what happened to her, there has been a small development today. We know she was filmed walking past a shop in London Road, Croydon on July the 7th, and that, it seemed, was the last known sighting of her. But today, Scotland Yard say a number of people have come forward, reportedly seeing someone matching her description in the days after July the 7th in the same area. Now, it's important to stress that these sightings haven't been confirmed, but the police say it's possible that she is still in the Croydon area and in need of help. What the police are doing is going through hundreds of hours of CCTV footage. They've downloaded about 50,000 hours so far, and they've gone through about a fifth of it to try to verify whether any of these sightings were in fact Awami. The police said tonight they're still hopeful, that they sincerely hope that they'll find her safe and well.
Thank you, Simon. Good evening. We begin with the stabbing of an 87-year-old man in Greenford in West London. Thomas O'Halloran was on his mobility scooter when he was attacked. Police are now searching for a man seen running away with a knife. Today, neighbours remembered the pensioner, who was well known for playing the accordion in the area. From Greenford, Simon Harris reports.
Tom O'Halloran was a busker with a difference. When he played, it was for charity. He was still making music at the age of 87. But yesterday, someone stabbed him to death as he rode home on his mobility scooter.
He was just like everyone's granddad, you know. He was a nice person. He didn't deserve what happened to him. He spoke to everyone, absolutely everyone. Nobody had a bad word to say against him. Just such a nice old man, and I think he was collecting for charity.
Today, a police tent covered the spot next to the A40 at Greenford in West London, where Mr O'Halloran was murdered. The police described it as a shocking act of unprovoked violence.
We believe that Mr O'Halloran was stabbed in Western Avenue before managing to travel 75 yards or so on his mobility scooter to Runnymede Gardens, where he flagged down a member of public for help.
But paramedics, including a team flown in by a helicopter, were unable to save him.
A police helicopter had landed across the way in one of the side streets down there, and I saw three medics on the police helicopter heading down towards the guy and applying CPR across the way on the grass verge.
Mr O'Halloran's attacker seemingly had little regard for the drivers and passengers who may have seen what happened. This was a brazen attack in front of multiple witnesses. The A40 is one of London's busiest roads. It was the start of the evening rush hour, and the police are appealing for drivers with dash cams who are passing to hand over their footage. Security cameras on houses along Western Avenue might also have captured the killing. And within hours, these images were released of a man with blood-stained gloves carrying a knife who was filmed running from the spot where Mr O'Halloran was attacked. The police described him as clearly a dangerous individual. Tom O'Halloran's musical talents were familiar to many people in and around Greenford. He would often busk outside Tesco's in Perivale, recently raising money for victims of the Ukraine war. Another popular spot was Greenford Station.
He just used to sit outside the tube station and he'd play his accordion and people would give him money. So, you know, such a shame. Terrible, terrible thing to happen in this neighbourhood.
Tom O'Halloran was a grandfather. His murder has left the many people who knew him deeply shocked.
Well, you said it there, Simon. Even for London, this is incredibly shocking, isn't it?
Yes, Duncan, I'm afraid that brutal killings involving knives are all too common in London. But here was an 87-year-old grandfather, a real community figure known for his busking and also for his charity fundraising. What on earth would possess someone to target such an elderly, vulnerable man trying to get home on his mobility scooter and end his life in such a vicious way? Well, thanks to CCTV, the police do have pictures of a suspect, and there are very clear images of the suspect's face, which you would think should make identifying him quite easy. But tonight the police have also warned that the man they're looking for is clearly dangerous and should not be approached.
Simon Harris in Greenford, thank you very much. Good evening. It's been a day of frustration for rail passengers in and around London, with the majority of train services cancelled, and it's likely to keep on happening. One of the big unions has promised more disruption, and tomorrow some bus drivers and underground staff will join what has become a summer of strikes. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has been to see what impact today's strikes are having.
Windsor is a town which relies on its railways. Every day during summer, thousands of tourists take the train, and today was no different. Despite the nationwide rail strike, Windsor's 2 stations were busy. In a nearby coffee shop, the day did start quieter than normal.
Usually early in the morning we get commuters who get takeaway coffees before they go into London to work. Didn't have any of that this morning, a lot quieter, which affected us a lot because that's usually our morning trade.
In the shops, it was locals rather than visitors who were staying away.
It doesn't stop the tourists from coming in because a lot of them come by bus, and of course if you made the journey into England you're probably going to go see the castle and hopefully come into our store. But for locals it really dissuades them, because why would they sit on a crowded train or pay X pounds for a taxi when they could come next week or the month after.
Outside the castle, changing the guard is a must for tourists, and today's sightseers weren't put off by a mere rail strike.
Instead of coming via Paddington and coming that way, we've actually come through Pimlico, Vauxhall and come on the Riverside train.
How surprised are you that it was that easy?
Very surprised, pleasantly surprised.
What impact has the train strike had on you coming today?
None, because we've driven here. But my daughter, who was going to try and get down for London, couldn't come. But luckily my granddaughter's staying with us, but it's a pain for those living in London.
I'm French, so train strikes for me is quite common, unfortunately, so I've learned to roll with it, really.
Members of the RMT are in dispute with Network Rail and the train companies over pay and job security. The union says the strikes will go on until there's a settlement.
I addressed a meeting of over 5,000 RMT strikers last night. They're fully committed to this dispute. If we have to reballot because we don't get a settlement in time, I'm confident our members will deliver that mandate again and take more strike action if necessary.
There's no lack of readiness to talk. The issue is that there are some fundamental disagreements. We think the way to solve this is to put our offer, a very decent, fair offer, to a referendum of RMT members, my staff, and I think that's the way to solve this.
This was the 6th attempt by the RMT to bring the rail network to a standstill. But rail strikes no longer seem to have the impact they once did. Working from home has given many commuters an option, even an excuse, to avoid a tricky trip to the office. On the river, the duck tours were fully booked, with hardly any no-shows, although Liz could have done without the hassle of an extra 90 minutes on her journey to work.
Although I think they deserve more money, I do think it's getting a bit too much now. It's having too much of an impact on everyone else, and what's already a long day for people is becoming even longer with the train strikes.
The only headache for Windsor's visitors was making sure they were back at the station before the last train of the day.
And Simon, this is the first of 3 days of strike action.
Yes, after 6 days of strikes by RMT members on mainline rail, tomorrow we get the 6th strike by London Underground workers. Now, that's not a dispute over pay. They've had a pay increase of more than 8% this year, but it's a dispute over job cuts and possible changes to TfL's pension. And we can expect serious disruption on the Underground with very few trains running, and already some sign of that disruption this evening. Even before the strike has started, there are problems on the Bakerloo line which are being blamed by London Underground on the strikes. Also tomorrow, London Overground will be affected, and in a separate dispute, 1,600 bus drivers in West London are also walking out. And then on Saturday, we get a repeat of today's strike. That'll be the 7th walkout by those rail workers.
Simon in Windsor, thank you.